Welcome, Virgo. Dadhichi here from astrology.com.au. It's November 2019 and straight into this very, very important transit, which has to do with the retrogression of your ruling planet Mercury, right at the outset of the month. Here in the third house of Scorpio, which has to do with your communication, short travels, to some extent educational pursuits. And we see there on the second the simultaneous transit of Venus into this fourth house. Now, what I've said is often we get so distracted by the issues at hand, and this retrograde Mercury points very, very clearly to having to reappraise some aspect of those areas in your life that I just mentioned, travel, communication, contracts, negotiations. We're so caught up in that we overlook these beautiful aspects here that are happening in the fourth house. This is a very, very critical angle of the horoscope. There are four angles: 1, 4, 7, 10. Fourth house has to do with inner peace, happiness, the domestic sphere, one's mother, one's family. It also has to do, believe it or not, with integrity and the moral fibre of a person. So this is really nice when we see Jupiter here, Venus here. And so what I'm saying to you is that don't get too waylaid by this retrogression of Mercury. It's going to be moving into that tailspin, as I call it, for a couple of weeks. And you don't want to get so anchored down in that you miss the really beautiful opportunities that you've got here with Venus and Jupiter. And as the month progresses, you will see that this energy intensifies, beautifies. So it's lovely for your own personal living space, for the relationships you have with your family, in particular with your mother, but most importantly, the relationship that you have with yourself. Take a look here. The full moon is going to make its transit across Uranus here in your ninth house of values against this third house sun. That's the full moon there on the 12th. But notice that it's also going to involve this retrograde Mercury. So I think there's some educational implications here. For some of you, it could be legal in nature. The full moon taking place in the ninth house. Long journeys, legal matters, philosophy, expansion of your higher mind. All of these sorts of things are indicated by the moon. And by the way, the moon rules your 11th house. The 11th house is the bringer of fulfillment of one's desires. It is a desire house, and as it's moving through these houses, particularly the new moon and that full moon that we just saw there in the ninth house, is very, very lucky, indicative of acquisition of past karmas, doing good deeds, that type of thing. It moves through your career sector on the 15th and 16th, then to the conjunction of your karmic planet here in the 11th house of friendships. So a lot of energy will be focused on this area, and it may be worrisome energy. We notice here that there's those hard aspects, which we've been seeing every month from this sector, by the way. There seems to be a repeat of this as the planet swings around. It will touch these planets again and again. But the most important thing are the lunations, as we've mentioned, this ninth house. It moves to the 12th house on the 19th here, bringing with it a rather low-key energy. It can also show a friend going away or some deception from friends. Be straight in this camera. I hope that's straight enough for you. So you need to keep your wits about you there around the 18th, 19th, 20th. Don't trust everything coming out of everyone's mouth. I want you to be a little more on top of that. Notice here Mercury, after all this time, so pretty much most of the month, stationary, moving into its direct motion just as Mars moves into this third house as well. So there's a dynamic impulse there, dynamic energy associated with your communication. That reappraisal period that you went through with the retrograde Mercury in this area shows that you're ready for action. Mars in the third house is excellent. It is a wonderful placement, and especially as it rules your 8th house of shared resources, which is not considered a great sector for you. Nonetheless, the ruler of that 8th house in the third neutralizes it. It's, I guess you call it that mathematical principle, negative times a negative is positive. So this is all very, very positive. You have to be forceful in your communications when Mars is here, or people will stomp all over you. I think you've got the message from this retrograde Mercury being here. Moon has just moved into this area, so it's going to trigger these planets. And that's in readiness for the very last important transit. Well, there's a couple here. Venus moving to your 5th house of creativity. And the new moon here on the 27th, back in that 4th house, which is self, satisfaction, mother, family. And look at that lovely combination here. Great wealth of generosity, wealth of good feelings between you and your family members. It's a great time to rekindle the love that you have for those people. We notice in the last couple of days of the month, Venus, the moon here, still in its new phase, bringing a whole sort of positive spin, emotionalism and love with Venus to this 5th house of creativity, love affairs, children, and essentially getting in touch with that inner self of yours. So I hope that's helped. I'll be back next month, but don't forget to pop in at my site, astrology.com.au. Drop me a line here, subscribe, and by all means, don't be afraid to have a personal reading with me, because that's really where the magic starts, where we can unearth a whole lot of potential that you're probably not even aware of yourself. I call them the karma keys, and I want to share that with you. Till next month, take care. Bye-bye.